Hi everyone, and welcome to the last three modules of the course 8, 9, and 10. In the first two, we will talk more about dichotomies, while in the last one, I will give you some exercises to close. I hope you have enjoyed the course and, I hope that it helps you to take a different look at works of art, society, and the world. So, let's start this last module, and I hope you will enjoy it. In module number 8, we focus on the culture-nature dichotomy prevalent in Western dualist thinking as it's made visible by works of Western art, but also as it has been challenged by artists and works of art from around the world. This module makes visible, as we did before with the previous modules, the connection between gender stereotypes that place men as the reproducers of culture and women and also other colonized subjects as somehow inherently closer to nature, and looks at how these socially constructed gender stereotypes are being constituted through representation in visual arts. As we already seen through our work with previous modules, the dichotomies explored within this course are deeply interconnected and constantly interact and reinforce each other. The culture-nature dichotomy is another oppositional distinction that plays an important role in the construction of gender in such a way as to exclude women from a number of categories, such as the public sphere, the realms of mind and reason, even the category of subject, as we have seen in previous modules. The culture-nature dichotomy is closely related to the mind-body, public-private, reason-emotion, and subject-object dichotomies. In this module, we will see once again, and we will explore again how visual representations of the culture-nature dichotomy in art can work to normalize gender-based violence, most commonly gender-based violence against women and girls in today's world. The module ends with examples of art that challenge and resist the stereotypical gender divisions present in the dualistic culture-nature dichotomy. At the end of module 8, you will be able to answer the following questions. What is the culture-nature dichotomy? How is the culture-nature dichotomy defined by gender, and how is it used to organize gender roles and stereotypes? How does the hierarchical gender culture-nature dichotomy intersect with other issues of power, such as racism and sexism? How is the culture-nature dichotomy maintained, reproduced, and reimagined in works of art? How do gender stereotypes linked to the culture-nature dichotomy contribute to gender discrimination and inequality? How does the culture-nature dichotomy contribute to the maintenance of gender-based violence and gender-based violence against women? At the end of the module, you will be able to use the culture-nature dichotomy as an analytical tool to read works and from a gender perspective. And you will be able to understand the relationship of the culture-nature dichotomy in relation to the dichotomies discussed above, but also how it relates to other issues of power such as racism and sexism. To sum up, the culture-nature dichotomy splits the world into a clear division between culture and nature, where culture is represented by development, linearity, progress, civilization, and nature is something primitive, circularity, backwardness, fertility. That's why we can say that culture is the man and nature is the woman. The culture-nature dichotomy prefers the category of culture which has been constructed as masculine. And the culture-nature dichotomy is not only gendered, but also strongly racist. We can do now some exercise like select one or more of the below images to critically engage with. Keeping the culture-nature dichotomy in mind, read the images guided by the following questions that I suggest you to write down. What is present and visible in the artwork, and in what way? How are masculinity and femininity depicted and represented in the artwork? Does the artwork produce hierarchical relationships between men and women? And how does it do that? Can the representation of men and women in artwork be potentially harmful to individuals? Does the work contribute to gender equality and inequality? And what kind of potential implications can you imagine with regard to gender equality and inequality? Does the artwork normalize harmful gender stereotypes and gender inequality? And can you see connections between these representations of men and women and the acts of gender-based violence that are manifested in the world today? Please give examples. And then think of examples of actual gender stereotypes that are harmful to the mental and physical health of individuals and outline strategies you could use in class to discuss particular types of gender-based violence through these or other artworks. Here we have a painting that we already saw in the previous modules. Del Boat, The Man in the Street. These women in the painting are represented as wild, primitive. The man, on the other hand, is organized, structured. So the expectations on women are to be available like fruits, natural resources, naked. That's why it's linked to nature. And here, the painting of Sebastiano Ricci, The Temptation of Saint Anthony. And well, the title gives you a lot of information on what is the idea about women, temptation. So, woman is uncontrollable. Woman needs to be controlled. Woman needs to be saved from herself. And here we can find psychological harm and this idea that women need to be controlled and corrected by men, who is the guardian. This is a very strong and important sculpture of Benvenuto Cellini, Perseus with the head of Medusa. In the image, in this sculpture, these men use violence in order for women to retrieve order, structure, and rationality. So we have psychological harm, physical harm, femicide that we can find in today's world, actually. And now we go through module number 9, the order-chaos dichotomy. The module makes visible the connection between gender stereotypes that place men as producers of order and women as stuck in a state of chaos, and explores how these socially constructed gender stereotypes are constituted through representation in visual art. The order-chaos dichotomy, as will be seen throughout this module, is, for example, very close to the culture-nature dichotomy discussed in module 8. In that, both dichotomies ascribe femininity to a mode of circularity, disorientation, mystery, and instinct, and masculinity to a mode of linear progression, structure, and development. In this module, we explore how visual representation in art can work to normalize gender violence against women, most commonly women and girls in today's world, and how it's produced and justified by the dualist thinking of the order-chaos dichotomy. The module ends with examples of art that challenge and resist the stereotypical gender division present in the dualist order-chaos dichotomy. At the end of this module, you will be able to answer the following questions. What is the order-chaos dichotomy? How is the order-chaos dichotomy defined by gender, and how is it used to organize gender roles and stereotypes? How does the order-chaos dichotomy, hierarchical and gendered, intersect with issues of power, not only with sexism, but also, for example, with racism and disability? How is the order-chaos dichotomy maintained, reproduced, and reimagined in works of art? How do gender stereotypes linked to the order-chaos dichotomy contribute to discrimination and gender inequality? How does the order-chaos dichotomy contribute to the maintenance of gender-based violence and gender-based violence against women? The placement of masculinity within the categories of mind, reason, and culture has created and almost automatically stalled the idea that masculinity is associated with the protection of social order, legality, and public life, making men the guardians of order. Taking into account the previous forms, it should come as no surprise that chaos associated with the forces of nature, emotion, violence, aggression, mystery, wildness, instinct, instability, and ferocity has become one of the characteristics of femininity. To protect order, chaos must be fought. In other words, chaos requires order and structure. Chaos is not able to do this on its own. As already discussed in Module 8, this sometimes expresses itself as the Western men's need to save women from themselves or non-Western women from non-Western men. As we also seen in the dichotomies discussed in previous modules, the order-chaos dichotomy doesn't only operate along gender lines, but for instance also includes race and sometimes disability. So now we can take a look at the articles below about forced sterilization, male prejudice in medical trials, hysteria, sexual and reproductive rights. How would you relate the issues raised in the articles to the order-chaos dichotomy? On what other strands of power can the order-chaos dichotomy act? Reading the article above. And we can do some exercises. Below are the artworks discussed in the previous modules. In the image gallery, you can find more information and historical facts about each artwork. Keeping the order-chaos dichotomy in mind, read the images guided by the following questions. Be as specific as possible and note down your answers to use them as a starting point for class discussion. What is present and visible in the artwork and how? How are masculinity and femininity depicted and represented in the work of art? Does the work of art produce hierarchical relationships between men and women? And how does it do that? Can the representation of men and women in the artwork be potentially harmful to individuals? Does the work contribute to gender inequality, and what kind of potential consequences can you imagine regarding gender equality inequality? Does the artwork normalize harmful gender stereotypes and gender inequality? And can you see connections between these representations of men and women and the acts of gender-based violence against women that occur in the world today? Please give examples. Think of examples of current gender stereotypes that are harmful to the mental and physical health of individuals and outline strategies you could use in class to discuss particular types of gender-based violence through these or other works of art. For example, here we have this painting of Giambattista Tiepolo, The Empire of Flora. Women are depicted nude, men are depicted clothed, they are wearing clothes. So women represent nature, and the season of spring, and they are wild and chaotic. Men are represented as cultured and ordered. In this painting, we have forced marriage and the issue of domestic violence. And again, we find this image of Sebastiano Ricci. And here again, we have this woman who is uncontrollable, wild, and chaotic. And this one again, where we find domestic violence and forced marriage, and the femininity as wild and represented as primitive, immoral, feral, and masculinity represented as organized and structured. This is the sculpture that we already saw, that we knew, and it's about masculinity needs to use violence in order for femininity to retrieve order and structure. So the use of violence is justified. And this unknown one, again, masculinity needs to use violence, and the use of violence is justified. So we have physical harm, psychological harm, domestic violence. As has become clear through the artworks depicted in this module, femininity is depicted as wild, primitive, feral, untamed, and out of control. This fits into persistent gender inequalities, and the traces of this dichotomy can be found in many cases of gender-based violence in today's world. There are many cases in which women are considered unable to make their own choices. One of the best known and most persistent example is that of hysteria. The medical diagnosis that describes women as having a wide range of symptoms, including anxiety, nervousness, sexual desire, being irritable, loss of appetite for food or sex, sexually wild behavior, and a tendency to cause trouble for others. There was no exception that diagnosed women were forced into isolation, confinement, or a mental health institution. Forced sterilization is one of the many examples. Women who are deemed as feeble-minded and or deviant risk to undergo sterilization without their consent. So please see and read here for Article 39 of the Istanbul Convention on Forced Abortion and Sterilization. Similarly, laws on reproduction that are currently being challenged globally prohibit women from having control over their own bodies. Girls and women are thus often classified as crazy, insane, manic, or psycho, not being able to control themselves. The order-chaos dichotomy sees men and masculinity as guardians of order and structure, saving or punishing femininity for the chaos they generate. This is visible, as we saw before, in works of this kind, such as Benvenuto Cellini's Perseus with the head of Medusa and Sebastiano Ricci's The Temptation of St. Anthony. This association of men and masculinity with restoration and as guardians of order and structure persists in many forms of gender inequality and gender-based violence against women in today's world. Its traces can be found, for example, in cases of domestic abuse, violence, and even in cases of feminicide, which are sometimes justified by the protection, maintenance of order in the home. just as men become possessive of women and place restrictions on the behavior of women to control them. So, you can do some exercises now. Can you think of other recent and current real examples and cases of gender-based violence and gender-based violence against women in your local community or in the global news that reflect the stereotypical ideas represented in the artwork in this module? Consider, for example, the case of Britney Spears, who was kept under the guardianship of her father for 13 years. Many artists, scholars, activists, and others have challenged, resisted, and subverted the order-chaos dichotomy in various ways. The term hysteria, for example, has even been reclaimed within certain feminist movements, not as a medical condition, but as a cultural one, as an embodied and somatic index of forms of oppression. Look at the artworks below and try to answer this question. In what ways do this work challenge and or resist oppressive relations produced by the order-chaos dichotomy? How do these works reimagine more socially equal, inclusive, and fair alternatives? Try to identify some of the creative strategies that artists have employed in addressing and reimagining some of the harmful social, cultural, and environmental ideas and beliefs given by the dualist and gender distinction at work in the order-chaos dichotomy. How do some of these works address alternative social, cultural, and environmental issues to the order-chaos dichotomy that are more equal, inclusive, and socially fair? And here we have some artworks of Louise Bourgeois and Joanna Naukarinen. So we go now to the last module, module 10. And this module consists of interactive exercises that highlight the intersectional nature of the dichotomies discussed in this e-learning course. As you engage with the artworks in this module, try to identify as many of the dichotomies at work in each of the images as possible. Please note how these dichotomies are value-laden, hierarchical, and gendered. And note how these often unconscious and deeply rooted cultural scripts are deeply interconnected and how they reinforce each other seamlessly. To assist you in analyzing the artworks below from a gender perspective and to help you identify the areas of gender inequality to which the artworks may contribute, as well as to name the areas of gender-based violence, there are a number of visual labels that you can select and attach to each of the image. So that's all. I hope you do your exercises because they will help you a lot to better understand some artworks, but also to read what's happening in the world today and with a different perspective and in a different way. So thank you again for your attention and bye.